So, you know the drill. We're playing Stray next. Woo! But that's not why you're here. You're here to hear me talk about GTA 5 for some reason. Even though I've already done a video on this, this is going to be nice and short. This is just the wrap-up review thing. I'm still not sure if this is going to be a thing that sticks. I don't know. We're still kind of feeling the waters here a little bit. I don't want to get too much in the weeds here, and I definitely don't want these to be too long. Because time is not a thing I have in my life right now. I had to wake up early to do this, and I'll have to do that every day I do this. So that's just life, right? I'm not here to complain, I'm just stating fact. So we'll see. But for now, let's talk about GTA 5. Now, every GTA game has that GTA moment. You know, when the mission sucks and it's like, you get to that part of the game and it's like, And everybody has a different opinion on when that is. In 3, or in Vice City, or in San Andreas, or in 4. There's always that one mission, right? And you probably could think of several off the top of your head. GTA 5 doesn't have that. I bring this up because, well, GTA 5 has its issues, especially with regards to things like, I don't know, the entire Kiflom chain, or a lot of the secondary and task-related stuff, the collectathon kind of stuff. Ultimately, the gameplay's pretty solid in GTA 5. Very few complaints. It never stopped being fun, and I wasn't tired of it even after the 45th hour. So, make of that what you will. That's important, though. I want you to remember that, because the story is not nearly quite as positive. Or rather, not as percentage positive, because the intro, the first act, the second act, near perfect. Probably wouldn't change anything about that. Very, very, very few micro refinements at best. But then it gets into the third act, and the moment you hit the third act, the narrative gets worse and never stops getting worse. The further on the game goes, the more it starts to fray and fall apart, and honestly, that's pretty normal for GTA games. How many GTA games have a strong middle section? Or a strong outro? Now, you're probably thinking, you're just being harsh and unfair towards GTA games. Actually, all games have that problem. Of all genres, of all everything. It is the rare exceptions that manage to nail it all the way through. Most games kind of fall apart after a certain point. And 5 is no exception to that. The acting stays on point. The dialogue stays on point. It's just the narrative starts to fray. I talked about this extensively during the review. If you want to hear more thoughts, you're going to have to go watch it. But in summary, I feel like they dragged the drama out too much. The story sequencing goes directly to hell. Like, there's no logical connecting threads between a lot of the events that happen. And you could really feel that they had moments and missions they wanted to do that they bent the narrative around to make happen, even if it made no sense. There's a whole lot of because plot that happens in the latter half of the game. And it's all over the place. And it sucks. And the worst part is they keep hammering in these narrative points, not being paid, for example, or how much drama we got. It's just there to create fake drama. It's just there to pad out the runtime. And it just gets more and more aggravating the more they hit those beats until finally, you get to the ending. And in the ending, it's like, oh, right, we can actually do something about all this. And then we do. Relatively easily and effortlessly. And there's so many other ways they could have gone with this. We talked about a lot of those ways on camera. They could have made it a recurring thread that each of the 3 principal protagonists actually gives a damn about getting paid for various reasons. We could have made a thing where, Michael's trying to get into movie making, and Franklin's trying to get into the casino business, and maybe Trevor's trying to get his old trade up and going. Maybe he's trying to take over Merryweather or something like that. That feels like a thing he could be doing. And so they kind of need that dough to come in order to make those happen. Or maybe we could do a thing where the principal villains of the work are actually the Act 1 villains of the work, and we move on to slightly bigger fish by the time we get to the second act or the third act or the fourth act. And so forth and so on. I'm not going to list all of them. Again, that's what the stream's there for. You get the idea. The biggest problem here is that almost every villain of this game is pathetic, which can work if you do it on purpose, but I don't think they did. I think the game really wanted these villains to be big, intimidating kind of people. They wanted them to be, oh my gosh, because they're constantly portraying on how much everyone's like, oh man, we gotta go along with this, and I guess we'll do this, and if we screw this up, they're gonna be on our ass, and we're gonna lose our lives. And yet, they are consistently portrayed as being pathetic. Informed attribute is what this is called, when we're told something, but shown the opposite of it. And so I don't buy it. If they'd actually made the villains actually pathetic, this might have worked. If they'd made the villains actually threatening, this might have worked. They didn't either. And so the narrative just gets worse and worse the longer you keep dragging this point on. And that's even ignoring the fake drama between Trevor and Michael, which honestly resolves pretty naturally right about the beginning of Act 3, and then keeps going for another 10 or 20 hours, depending on how you're playing. And this all probably sounds like I hate this game, so it's a good time to mention that this game actually broke the roof off of the review system, got nearly a 600 golden number. Some of you don't really know how the golden number system works, so I thought I'd give you a really, really quick diatribe here. Diatribe? Is that the right word? Explanation for how the system works. So, you know how there's that old out of 10 system and how it's worthless and terrible? Well, the golden number system is an attempt to give every given game a score based on a large number of variables. Gross positives, net positives, gross positives, net positives on both the story and the gameplay axis. The relative density of how good a game is, the relative ratio of how good a game is, and the variance of how good the gameplay is versus the story, okay? Those are the major features that go into determining the golden number. The golden number only matters versus itself. There's no out of. There's no blank out of blank, right? The roof is determined by the best game we've reviewed, and the floor is determined by the worst game we've ever reviewed. And that's changing and shifting and morphing because the whole system is designed to be modular. Make sense? Cool. So, previous to now, Diablo 3 was our top runner-up, top game, which scored like a 400 something, which is really, really, really high. By the way, for a bit of perspective, anything above 100 is what I would consider a great game. Not merely good, but great. So getting all the way up here is actually bonkers. You're probably thinking, well, what is it about GTA 5 that makes it so good? I mean, it's not as funny as the previous ones. It doesn't hit the character beats the same way as 4. It doesn't have the wacky silliness of San Andreas. It doesn't have the tone and atmosphere of Vice City. It doesn't even have the humor of 3 and its radio station. So what the hell? Why is 5 so good? I can tell you very, very simply, because it's actually the same reason it scored so well in the previous systems as well. It's because it does gameplay and story very well. Think about this for a moment. Most of the best games out there, the best gameplay games out there, tend to have really, really good gameplay and maybe decent story. But the focus is clearly on one side of that axis. Most of the best story games out there tend to have really, really great story, and the gameplay is just kind of there. How many games have both? It's my experience, and I've been doing this for over a decade now, that the ridiculous minority, very, 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 very few games, really focus on story and gameplay and nail it. They have to nail it, too. They have to be good scores, they have to do a very good job with both, and they have to focus on both. That's difficult, that's costly, and it kind of honestly makes sense, even when you think about it from a zoomed-out perspective, of why most games don't do that. Most game designers aren't good writers, and vice versa. So that's fine, right? GTA 5 does both. That's it. That really is the secret. The reason GTA 5 nails it, the reason GTA 5 is the king, is because it has great story and great gameplay. Despite all my issues with the second half of the game, and that did drag the story down substantially. The fact of the matter is the first chunk of the story is fantastic, and even when it gets bad, it's still well acted, well animated, well presented, etc. And the gameplay, like I said, never stopped being fun. I never stopped enjoying driving and shooting and doing the huge variety of different types of missions you can do. Not just the heists. There's a lot of variety to the mission design in this game, and there's fun and zaniness and awesomeness, and it's great, and I love it. I have no real problem saying GTA 5 is the best reviewed game I've ever reviewed. It's not my favorite game of all time. That's not how that works. But I'm not sure any game will ever beat this one. Now, a weird question for you. Do you think any game could beat GTA 5 in my review system? Remember, it has to have very good gameplay and very good story. It has to have a good ratio. It has to have good density. It has to have good variance. So, do you think any game could actually peak this? Because I'm not sure there is. One of the games I thought might manage that was Dragon Age Origins, which just came up short. Again, too heavy on the story axis. Another game I thought might do this is Diablo 3, which, well, as already talked, that's the number 2 slot now. There's StarCraft 2 on the horizon someday, and that's going to have a shot, I think. But at the same time, StarCraft 2 is probably going to be slanted on the gameplay, not the story, so who knows. As much as I'd love to say Final Fantasy VI will, FF6 just doesn't have enough meat on the bones, I don't think, to really surpass this. Now, it's a lot shorter. It's going to have a lot higher density. but I'm not sure if it's going to be able to beat this king. And that's my thoughts. What about you? Honest question. Either way, pumpernickel, because people get upset if I don't say it. That's just become the thing, right? That's my super easy, barely an inconvenience thing. I gotta always say that. We're gonna try Stray next, and we'll see what we think of that. Pumpernickel.